I think we're live. I mean, not live, but I think we're recording right now. I'm Christine Wolf. I am a journalist. I've written the most important piece that I have ever put together. It's on depression and a series called Melancholia by Suzanne Rothmeyer, who is right here. She's going to say, and the model who appeared in all of the images, her name is Gina DeLeo-Stamey. And I feel like I've known both of you for the longest time because we've been working on putting this piece together for over a year. But now this is the first time that we've ever met live in quarantine.
Right. Yeah. So
So
exciting though.
I just wanted to record this because it was a profound and moving experience for me, and I felt like all three of us really connected in ways that I've never connected with subjects that I've written about, and I wanted to hear your voices, and then we can go through the images briefly and link to the actual article. Both of you are in Anacortes, Washington.
We are. We're in a small town, and yeah. And I had been doing conceptual photography for a few years, and I mean, on top of my regular photography business. And she had asked me out to lunch. I mean, we knew each other. We kind of had mutual friends. We knew each other on a very superficial level in that way. But she invited me out to lunch and said that she was interested in being involved in one of them, and which is pretty common. People like them, and they say, hey, do you need a model, or do you need this or that? And so we went out to lunch, and we got into a conversation. It was never intended to, that we were going to be talking about depression. And Gina, I don't remember how that initially came up, which one of us brought it up first, but it had been something. It was a project that I knew I wanted to do. I'd known I wanted to do it for a long time because I have a close family member who has struggled with deep depression over the years, my growing up. So I dealt with it, not myself, but with being in relationship with somebody in my family. So anyway, you must have brought something up or mentioned that.
I actually asked you point blank if you had thought about doing one on depression, because we talked about because I really wanted to know what your conceptual photography in your mind was about, because I really enjoyed looking at, I mean, you had your regular photography business, but you had started posting things that were just phenomenal artwork, pieces of art. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I had no idea kind of where you were going with that, like what you wanted to
Either did I
portray. Yeah, well, but that's what the
really
conversation was about, right? Like so I just wanted to see, and I didn't know if I could fit into any of those thought up ideas, or even even if I should be asking. I felt, to be totally honest, almost ashamed to come and ask you, hey, can I be part of, I at that point I was like, I could have done anything. I could have been holding the light for you. I could have been, because I was just so interested in what you were doing and everything that went into it, because I knew nothing about it. So I think that as our conversation flowed, the deep emotional imagery that would come from doing something or doing a depression themed shoot was like, it just was in my mind. And so I remember asking you if you'd ever thought about doing that when we were just kind of flowing in conversation, because our conversation really did just flow.
It did. Yeah. It was easy from the get-go.
And Suzanne, what was your reaction when she brought that up?
Well, I was really surprised. And I mean, when she brought it up, I was just like, well, that's funny that she would bring that up, because like I said, I wanted to do it for a long time, but I was afraid to do it. I was very concerned about how to do it. And I was concerned about my family member who might be sensitive to it. I was concerned about whether it was my story to tell, since I wasn't the person who struggled with it. There were a lot of things going on there for me that kept it on the back burner, because I didn't want it to be cliche. I didn't want to, I just wanted to be very careful with it. And so when she brought it up, it was just sort of like this trigger. And I thought, maybe there's a reason this is coming up in this conversation with this person. And then she revealed that she had struggled with depression her whole life, which just blew me away.
Wow.
Because I never would have guessed that.
Why?
That blows me away.
I know. And here's why. Gina, Rothmeyer and I were just talking about this actually the other night, and saying how, because we were laughing about that one image about how I had to keep sending you back to get uglier. And, we were just talking about, because look at her, like, she's gorgeous. She has a smile that just lights up a room. And just the way you are, Gina, in public anyway, you just would never guess. She's smiley, she's engaging, she's natural, and again, I think that's one of the cliches, that's one of the assumptions and generalizations I think that are made about people who are depressed, that, they're moping around all the time. And it's like, that's just not true. People who you wouldn't guess are suffering deeply.
I was just going to say, to put a little bit of, so, if somebody was watching this and didn't know, I'm a bartender. Besides a life coach that I'm kind of trying to, at some point, maybe just do that exclusively. I've been a bartender for years, bartender server. So that's partly how she knows me outside of that, and you can see somebody working in the public.
I'm drinking. Yeah.
It's being a server or whatever, being any sort of customer service representative, you do kind of have to just put out what you put out. I mean, I think with a lot of jobs or whatever, and sometimes that was very helpful for me. I would go from, being in bed at home going, okay, what time is it? I got to, get my shit together, excuse me, and go. And I had to, flip that switch. It's almost like, I'm in the back getting my apron on, and it's almost like going on stage. Right. And depression isn't something that you're, if you're not like really amazingly good friends with somebody, and even if you are, discussing it with them is something that's, first of all, deeply private. Second of all, it's something that I don't like bringing people down. Like, that's not it just brings me further down a lot of the times. And the people who I talk to about it, they don't know what to say. They don't know how to help. I think I talked to my mom probably the most about it. My poor mother. I mean, just trying, her heart broke for me all the time, because I would talk to her and just be crying, and I don't understand. I don't know why I can't feel better. I can't sometimes even put words to just the despair. And she would just be like, and I mean, now looking back, I'm like, God, I'm so sorry, Mom. My mom passed away in 2014. So I sometimes, look back and at our relationship, and I'm like, I just feel terrible that, because all she wanted to do is help me, because she was my mom. You get to this point of like, okay, well, I can talk to somebody who is a professional, I guess, like go to therapy, or I can talk to my friends about it who are done with hearing about it if I've talked to them at all. You know what I mean? It just feels like it's such a burden that nobody knows how to fix anyway. So it's almost pointless to talk to them, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
It totally makes sense. And then what just kind of blew me away when I saw the images for the first time was that they not only conveyed that pain and that sort of stage work that's required, but what it also did was show the perspective of some of the loved ones, like you're talking about, Gina, who are trying to love and not knowing what to say or what to do. So this is called Wait, I believe.
Right. And for me, this image was, I wanted it to represent, the isolation and the exposure at the same time. Like you're curled up in this fetal position. I remember my family member in this protective way, whether it was to stay in bed or hide in a dark room or whatever it was. And I think because it just felt too exposed, to the world. And at the same time, having this sort of generalized weight And we went out at dawn for this one, or just before dawn, actually. It was still dark out in a very cold, wet, muddy field. And
how was it for you, Gina?
And just, I had a little torch, and she laid very still, and I just literally painted her with the light over a long exposure.
Just laying there it was muddy. I was in the mud, and it was cold, and it was, before dawn, and we were right on the highway, like right on the side of the highway. So there's cars going by, and they're probably like, what the hell? Which, I guess that's part of modeling and stuff. That's what you do. And it wasn't a natural thing for me, but I felt like exposed. I felt very, cold, and like almost like hiding myself or trying to be warm in this. But also, just when I look at this image, it's so, from my point of view, I know that you said heavy, which I absolutely think is, with the mountain in the back and everything, but I definitely feel alone when I look at this.
This, for me, probably more than any other image for me personally, represents and brings up the most memories in a bit more literal way, because my family member would retreat to her room, to her bed, and all the while we're trying to go at her and pull her out, just pull her out, both literally and figuratively, out of herself, out of her room, out of her silence. So for me, the waves, the ocean is sort of that turbulence that's going on around her, and she's got it blocked out. She's
unreachable
in her space, and she's not having it, and the confusion, sort of the chaotic nature of that. That's what this one speaks to for me. And it was scary. It was scary.
How old were you kind of when the majority of those sort of feelings?
From when through my teenage years. It was a sibling. So yeah, it's a scary thing, because you can't reach that person, and you really want to reach that person. And like Gina was saying, you want to fix it. And then you wind up, having all these other emotions mixed into that as a sibling that are, terrible and immature, all of those things, and you don't really realize until you get older.
If you're going to depict depression, I think you've got to have one of somebody laying in bed. Like, that's just, I've spent more time in my bed when I'm really in the depth of it.
Literal, Gina, I did. I thought, oh, I don't want to be that literal, but it was such a huge image in my mind.
Absolutely. It really is. I mean, you just retreat to, I think when you're depressed, one of the things that you do is you sleep, because a lot of the times I didn't sleep, and you can't sleep, and, but when I could sleep, it was like a respite from the world, from what I was going through. Like bed was like, I didn't have to deal with anything. I was dealing with whatever was in my head, which was, causing me pain, and just going over it and over it and over. It's probably one of the worst places you can be if you're depressed, because all you're doing is wallowing in all of it. And then sometimes, if you're out and about, you forget about it for a little while. And then when you're asleep, you obviously forget about it until you wake up. But like, it's the spot that you go to just, I can't screw anything up if I'm in bed, even though you are, because you're not living, and you're not doing this and all the things that you're supposed to do.
Gina, would you say, because I have also experienced periods of severe depression, and one of the things that I think of when I look at this image, and tell me if this happens for you, is when you are in the throes of it, it's hard to see beyond right now. And so like, when I look at this image, and I have been there in my lifetime, and even though I know rationally, like, depression typically works as almost a phase and it will pass, but when you're in it, you just can't see beyond. You can't see even the horizon. You can't, imagine that there will be a sunrise or a sunset on the pain. You just think this is always going to last forever. And it's that like constant churning that is evoked for me when I look at this. I just think, yeah, this captures the I call it sort of the infinity feeling of depression, that it's just, this is never going to go away. This is never going to get better. This is hopeless. And when I saw that image, I thought, yeah, it's not the cliche curled up in a bed. It's being in a bed surrounded by chaos and absolutely no lifelines or safe harbor. It's just, you are completely untethered and you have no anchor to speak of.
Like I said, out in the middle of the ocean, like with nothing, like you're just nothing.
So can you both see the whole?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not ideal. Let's just hope that my tax information isn't on here and all of my, hopefully you can see.
Well, this one definitely by far took the most, logistically, and also just the most time, because the first thing I had to do is I had the whole image in my mind. After talking to my sibling and to Gina, it became way more clear to me that they felt so judged by themselves, but in reality, they were mostly judging themselves. Is really what it seemed to come down to, more than anyone else was judging them. And so that was the idea behind this one. So I wanted to have a real courtroom. I wanted to have her be all of the jury and be representing different aspects of herself. So we have her as, teenager. We've got her as the sullen, boyfriend, as the mother figure, as the bride, the wife. With them. I had to sit down. It was kind of funny because I had to sit down in this meeting with the judge, the main judge of this courtroom, and explain why I wanted to use their space and how I was going to use it, because they were very concerned about what I wanted to use it for, because obviously nobody's ever asked them to do anything like this. So just trying to convey to people, what I was trying to do without sounding like I was just insane. So that was probably the most interesting pitch I've ever given. Gosh, we spent 8 hours, right?
I think so.
Hours, and she did 15 wardrobe changes and multiple sex changes. And we didn't, normally I have, hair and makeup and stylists and things like that on shoots, editorial type shoots, and it was just Gina and I doing it all by ourselves.
Was that because, sorry to interrupt, but was it just the two of you because nobody else was allowed to be in that space?
That was part of it. They wanted to severely limit, and also, budget wise and that sort of thing. I was trying to do all of it on the cheap too. So
I mean, we talked about this image, I think, more than any of the other images, because it just took so much preparation. Suzanne was kind of the director. I was the actor, I guess, and also kind of trying to figure out, the 12 jurors, like what would that be for me? What would that be for a single person? We had to talk about what that would look like on somebody's face. I have to say I think the funniest ones, of course, were the men, when I did the men, because they're, you can only see from the waist up. So I think Suzanne has a photo where I'm just in like leggings or whatever. And but I'm
leggings and stilettos, I think.
So there was a couple times when people walked into the so yeah, we had a lot of fun.
This one came up really more out of Gina and my sister's conversations about what it feels like as a parent, which of course that's not something I had experienced, but I thought a lot about that in terms of my mom. So for this one, it really was all about, because it was so powerful to listen to. I mean, I remember feeling I remember being heartbroken for my mom, because I could see how much she wanted to fix it and couldn't. And this was all about that, the you know, the distance from your closest, most intimate relationships, you know, that occurs, and that they can see you, they can't reach you, you can't reach out to them, and you're just, again, that sort of isolation. And yeah, and it's just so sad. It's just sad.
I just see so much shame in Gina's body language.
And guilt. Yeah.
Guilt and
shame.
shame.
This is all about that.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, if we go through the history of this image, I think that when we first shot it, it was on a super foggy day, and I happened to live right next to this lake, and we had this little boat, and so we pushed it out, and I was in the fog on this lake. Clearly, you can't see any of that really with what's on here. So I had no idea that, or I didn't even know if Suzanne had an idea of how that was going to turn out. It was just like, you know,
not when I shot it. It wasn't until after I shot it and we were talking that then I knew that, because until then I felt like this is similar to the weight. I wanted to speak to that whole thing of the parental aspect, how you feel as a parent, and because there's such strong emotions. I think the child speaks more to the confusion and helplessness and not understanding of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
When she showed me the final image, she talked to me about the child there, and I remember opening the image on my phone, and she sent it to me originally, and I literally had to catch my breath. I have 2 boys, and I've been single for most of, I mean, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of it. And when I have gotten depressed, it just feels so like they're so innocent. They have no idea what's going on, and it makes it worse. It makes that feeling of, I've been depressed before I had them, and then when I had them and would go into depression, it was just like, they don't deserve this. They don't, you know, you're their caretaker. You're their everything. And I didn't want to teach them how to be depressed. I wanted to teach them how to be happy. And yeah, it's just hard. You just want to be a good mom. You want to give them everything that you didn't have, everything that you think they deserve, which of course is everything. And yeah, I don't know. This is
the one that helps people the most.
Yeah.
This image.
There's no question this one has been the one that that people have commented on and just talked about how it took their breath away too, whether they have depression or not. And you know, I think, Gina, when I hear you know, say about wanting to be a good mom, I will just tell you, the fact that you're talking about this, you know, and putting words and your image to the reality of it is it's pure strength. You know, it's not weakness. I think depression can make us feel weak, but I think what you're doing is really a sign of just unquestionable strength. This is why your art is just so compelling and just so deeply moving.
This is the one where I had to keep sending her back to get her to ugly herself up. Because, you know, in our conversations, she talked about how, you know, just those feelings of shame and guilt and everything, you know, how she looked on the outside, it was not how she felt. It was at complete odds to how she felt on the inside when she was going through a cycle of depression. no matter what anybody else saw when they looked at her, this, you know, what she saw was, how did you put it, Gina?
I felt ugly in every way. Like, it's not just like physically ugly. Like, I felt like everything inside me was, I didn't say the right things, I didn't do the right things, and it was all, and it wasn't just I'm not saying or doing the right things. It's like literally this weight of, like, after I'd speak, it would be like, ugh.
Like your very being, everything about you was just undesirable
Off.
and
Yes.
unworthy. All of those.
Unworthy is a very good way to put it. Yes.
On kind of thing.
A mask.
That's what it kind of felt like to me when she would talk about it. Like she's feels like she's going through her daily routines with this mask of normalcy. While inside she felt just devoid of any of that.
And like I said, I feel like there's mirrors everywhere whenever I feel like that. They're everywhere.
It's so true. And what I also found really remarkable about this image is when I first saw it, I thought, okay, so beautiful Gina is looking into the mirror and seeing a reflection of her ugly self. But then I looked at it again a different time, and I thought, when I'm depressed, it's often that ugly me that's looking in the mirror, hoping or trying to project that put together, smiley, presentable, strong person, and I just can't. But it's I saw just as much life or painful life in the image or the reflection as I did in the actual person.
But for me too, I look at it, and when we were shooting this too, there's almost a sense of wariness in both directions.
Yeah.
Of the other, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, I think Shattered was the name that I came up with it. You know, if we haven't already mentioned it, there was a certain point where I think Christine, did you ask us to each come up with our own names? I think it was you. Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
So without each other knowing what we were going to name them. So, you know, I kind of had some names in my head that I was using as working titles for them, but, and for me it was Shattered, but she came back with Confused. And it really stopped me in my tracks. Like I said earlier, I mean, I was not expecting that. I thought, and I just looked at it in a different way then, because it again, like from my child perspective that I'm always drawing on as far as my experience with it, it didn't, like, if I could go back and realize that my sister was as confused as we were, I mean, that's pretty powerful. Again, kind of speaking to that thing where it's, you know, you're so close to being normal and out in the world, but there's all of this going on that isn't visible.
I think a huge part of being depressed is not wanting to be depressed. It's confusing when it continues to kind of loom over, or continues to kind of get in the cracks, or somehow it gets in there. And I think a lot of that stems from not acknowledging that you have that feeling, or judging that feeling.
I want to feel intact. And when I'm depressed, I don't feel intact. I feel completely feeling on the verge of falling apart. And so the grasping of oneself is really evocative of just kind of keeping my shit together. And another one, you know, another multi-layered image that just says so much more than what you might think on first glance.
Oh yeah, I remember this one because you were looking for a place that had this sort of background, and you had said something about it being on the loop road, and I was like, can I just show you another spot that's not there?
Gina, are those your legs up above walking on?
No, those are my
That's
daughter.
actually my daughter's legs.
Oh, nice.
And
whose dog is that?
her ex-boyfriend.
A nod to him.
We were trying to find a place but the ferns and all of the roots and stuff were all there and real. And I composited a separate photo on top because I wanted to just convey that idea of, while they're just seemingly trapped and not in control of what's happening with them, inside them, that life is just going on around them. The sun is still shining and life is going past them. Mm-hmm. Life is passing by them while they're in this state. Intentionally, obviously, pulling color out of these, sort of like the movie Pleasantville, because I felt like, it saps you of
vitality,
life, color, and of meaning, and all of those things. And so all of them are pretty desaturated images. And I wanted her to be more saturated than what was going on up top.
At this point, I almost feel now with, the photos that I've done and stuff, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it, but definitely this was still very, very new for me. And so, she had mentioned this tree that was right on this road. And I was like, I think I know of another spot that we could go to. That would be a little less public.
It speaks to that sort of instability and fragility. Yeah, it's so precarious in a certain way. Yeah, it's this inner death is what it looks like. This death of this person who's still there and still walking around, but they're not who they are.
Mm-hmm. This one to me is exactly what it looks like. But, here, I think it's exactly what it looks like. Then I hear Suzanne say what she says, and I'm like, oh, wow. And as I'm looking at it, as she's talking, I'm going, wow. And while we were taking this, I was literally looking over a cliff. It was blowing. You can see my hair's in my face, the way I'm holding myself. And I was standing there having those thoughts of what it feels like to be done, to just be so over it. Like, I can't deal with this crap anymore. My feelings are so overwhelming and crushing, and I'm done. In the most horrible times when I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. It's like, no, there's so much more out there, and you felt better at times. You really have. Like, it's so hard to find that voice, because the voice of reason is just, it's just that. It's almost like the voice of like a teacher, or of somebody that you don't want to listen to, that you've heard the lesson so many times, and you're just like, okay, well, I would like a little bit more proof here.
It's like an other being, but in another way, it's like that, it's that person, but a lack of their being in that person is kind of how I experienced it. And because I knew how that person was when she wasn't struggling in that place. And in this time, I think for myself, as sort of a wrap up, in this time where, and I think it's so interesting that this is when this finally came together after a few years.
You're not kidding.
That you came into it then a year ago, Christine, almost, and then this happened. And the fact that it came together during this COVID crisis, and then we didn't even realize until right before it was published, that it was Mental Health Awareness Month. That wasn't planned.
Not at all.
And so it's just so interesting to me, because now all of these people, normal, are experiencing depression and anxiety, and they're getting a little taste of what people who really struggle chronically with it are experiencing, and it's revelatory. Both will gain understanding of the other side through this, is my hope, that bringing it out there, and now that everybody's feeling some level of it, or most people anyway, that exchange can happen, because I know through this project with Gina, I have a whole other appreciation for the other side of that equation. And I look at it differently than I did before.
You've captured both sides of it in ways that I have tried to explain and understand for years. It's amazing. So,
well, thank you. And thank you so much for your part in it, Christine. It was, I just love how you came into the picture, and I love that you did the writing on it. I think it was perfect that, because originally I was going to write whatever was going to be written about it. And
it would have been amazing.
I'll be honest, it was a little bit of a relief, just because of our collaboration had worked so brilliantly. I felt that it just seemed so meant to be.
Well, thank you. But I just want to add, when I talked to each of you on the phone individually before I wrote this, I remember just feeling like these are the conversations that change lives. When you, for sure, have depression, when you find somebody who is able to access language that can, it changes everything. You don't feel so ashamed. You don't feel like you're so alone. And you certainly feel like you can face the next round of it with a little less trepidation, because you know that there are people out there who understand it, appreciate it, and get it. And I think the more we can raise those numbers of people who appreciate it and can talk about it, I think the numbers that you were talking about that are right now increasing, we may get to see them go down.
Shedding light on anything is, you know, the impetus for some sort of action, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And the world is changing right now. I don't think that we're gonna come out of this the same. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I'm holding on to hope that through all of this, and from what I'm trying to focus on, I've just never seen so much compassion for people, and with what everybody's, you know, having to be quarantined all over the world, just the compassion that people have for each other right now, because everyone's going through it. You know, it's not just us or them, it's everyone. So I feel like it's been, the things that I've been able to see that are positive are really positive and really heartwarming and amazing. Really, it gives me new hope for humanity.
Well, thank you for all of this time. I can't wait to share this conversation and hear about the other conversations that it might inspire. So Suzanne Rothmeyer, Gina DeLeo-Stamey, thank you so very much.